David Pastrnak didn't just reach 400 goals last night. He also buried the Toronto Maple Leafs and the rebuild narrative with one sweet breakaway move.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans? I'm your host, Ian McLaren. Welcome to Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today is Wednesday, November 12th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. On today's episode, we are going to discuss last night's huge win over the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Boston Bruins are not supposed to be here, but right now they are tied for first in the Atlantic Division. We're going to touch on how David Pastrnak's milestone moment defines this season so far for the Boston Bruins, why the last two wins over Toronto flip the script in the Atlantic Division, and we'll close the day with a quick look ahead to Ottawa and Montreal, plus your Bruin of the day. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on socials at Locked NHL Bruins. That's on Blue Sky, X, Threads, Instagram, TikTok. You can find me, my Hockey Thoughts dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for nearly 20 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So last night there were kind of dual competing storylines for the Boston Bruins. On one hand, you have David Pastrnak streaking into the Toronto Maple Leaf zone alone with the puck on his stick and with one backhand deke, tucking it past Dennis Hildeby. He scored his 400th career goal. At that time, it gave the Bruins a 4-1 lead over the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is, we all know, a symbolic score between these two teams. And the whole team came out and celebrated. Morgan Geekie grabbed the puck from the net for his teammates' safekeeping, and everybody knew it was coming sooner than later. Such a special player. Geekie said, we're lucky to get to see that day in and day out, the way he handles himself on and off the ice. With the weight that he carries every day, the superstar that he is, you would never know that just talking to him. Everybody is an equal to him, according to Morgan Geekie. They all look up to him. We all learn every day from how he carries himself off the ice. And that's one of the reasons why he should be considered for the captaincy for this team. Although you've got a situation where Nikita Zadorov is very much cementing his place as a leader on this team as well. Now, Pastrnak scored. He's just the 6th Bruin in history to hit 400 goals. He's 2 away from passing Rick Middleton, and he's well on his way to becoming the Bruins' all-time goal leader. He's already got 400. Again, he is very close to passing Rick Middleton for 5th in the NHL, or sorry, 5th on the Bruins in all-time scoring. In fact, he's only 1 behind now because he added his 401st goal last season. So his next will tie him for 5th. He will then be 20 behind Brad Marchand, which he'll probably hit at some point this season. Patrice Bergeron sits in 3rd at 427. So Pastrnak needs only 26 more goals in order to tie for 3rd in franchise history in goals with our boy Patrice Bergeron. And right now, David Pastrnak is currently on pace for another fantastic season. After last night's 2 goals and 1 assist. He's on pace for 46 goals, 55 assists, and another 100-point season. And right now he's got 10 goals in 18 games. He's on pace for 46, so that would be 36 more goals, which would give him 437 goals, firmly third place, and just like 120 or so goals behind Johnny Busick for top spot on the team. Not even, like 109. So that's something that he could reach in 3-4 years most. He is going to be the most prolific scorer in Boston Bruins history when it is all said and done. That's one of the big storylines from last night. The other, of course, being the Bruins winning their 7th straight, including their 2nd in a row against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Pastrnak, of course, said it was awesome to top it off with a win, to be able to do it at home in front of the fans. That is why it was special. And before we get to the winning streak part of it, we got to talk about the bench clearing and a celebration. I've seen a lot of people on social saying, you don't do that for a 400th career goal. Maybe save it for 500. It's a bit of overkill, unnecessary celebration. Look, in the world that we live in today, we're taking every opportunity we get to celebrate, especially when it comes to a guy like David Pastrnak, who's been through so much in his career and in his personal life. Like, we're celebrating this guy as hard as we can. There are so few reasons to experience real joy in the world as it stands today. And when the guys came over, he said that is when it really hit him what he had accomplished. So cool. A kid in Czechia who grew up wearing newspaper shin pads. He's in the NHL. He's thriving. He's going to be the leading goal scorer for an Original Six franchise when it's all said and done. And he's helping this team win on a nightly basis. And after the crap show that they experienced last year, where he saw some guys that he was really close with being shipped out, he's now carrying the weight of this franchise on his shoulders. You're darn right we're celebrating that. And the guys on the bench love him so much, they probably didn't even think about it. They're like, oh, you got it. Let's get out there. Let's celebrate him. I'm sorry if Maple Leafs fans felt showed up or whatever, but we're celebrating David Pastrnak as often as we can because he is such a beauty, such a gem, and we are so lucky to have him as a member of the Boston Bruins. Big picture, the Bruins win their 7th in a row. They're now well up in the Atlantic Division standings. David Pastrnak, with his 3-goal game, he's now tied for 6th in NHL scoring. And it's a season-long storyline that we've been touching on. David Pastrnak's prime years, he's not wanting a rebuild. He's leading the retool, and you could see how much he's bonded with new head coach Marco Sturm when Sturm came up after he scored that goal, gave him a big hug on the bench. It just meant so much to everybody. And again, we're so lucky to have this guy in black and gold. So, David Pastrnak, 400 goals. The Bruins win 7 in a row. We'll touch more on these stats, the significance of this win, and take a quick look ahead at what's coming next to see if they can keep it going here as the podcast continues. I don't know about you, but when I am hydrated, everything just seems to work better. My focus, my energy, my mood, even my skin. That's why I've been using Drip Drop, a doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. Drip Drop is not your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. Hydration has become non-negotiable to me. Drip Drop helps me feel sharper, calmer, and honestly, just better overall. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Stock up now before the winter hits hard. Keep your body and mind performing at their best with Drip Drop. Thank you so much again for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. The Bruins are #1 right now in the Atlantic Division, kind of. They have a division high 22 points in 18 games. Although if you cut it down by point percentage, well, what do you know? They are still second there as well, now with a +3 goal differential. They're ahead of the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are at 600. The Ottawa Senators at 588. Red Wings 563. The Panthers at 531. And the Maple Leafs at 500, with the Sabres the only team currently under 500. A remarkable, yes, early season turnaround for the Boston Bruins. But right now, they're playing structured, composed, and have clearly bought in when it comes to what Marco Sturm is preaching. And I discussed yesterday on the podcast about their kind of underlying numbers, expected goals being well below 50% at 5-on-5. Last night at 5-on-5, the Bruins had the advantage in terms of shot attempts. Shots were even, 19-19. There was a lot of shenanigans in this one that created power play opportunities, penalty minutes up. When it comes to scoring chances, though, 53.3% advantage for the Bruins, and high danger chances were 13-9. Now, the Bruins did allow a shorthanded goal in this one, and they also allowed the Maple Leafs to dictate the play somewhat. When you look at all situations in this one, the Leafs had the advantage when it comes to high danger scoring chances, and that's mostly because the Bruins took more penalties than Toronto did, right? And that's going to happen when there's just some rough and tumble play. There was 2 power play goals for the Bruins, 3 power play goals for the Bruins last night, a shorthanded goal and a power play goal for the Toronto Maple Leafs, who lost Anthony Stolarz and Austin Matthews due to injury. Stolarz looked like he had been pulled after the first period. It later came out that it was an injury. And then Austin Matthews was injured on what people are calling a boarding hit by Nikita Zadorov, although he didn't really hit him into the boards. That led to Zadorov later being targeted by Max Domi, who he didn't want to fight because they are former junior teammates. Max Domi appeared to think that he dusted Zadorov by doing the old glove shake off, even though he looked more like a duster out there than one who was showing up, Nikita Zadorov. That physical edge, he continues to set the tone for the Boston Bruins. They're winning battles, and they're showing that they will not be pushed over. Sturm said afterwards, winning back-to-back games against Toronto, that is pretty cool. Pavel Zacha, Hampus Lindholm each scored power play goals. Alex Steeves scored his first as a Bruin against his former team. And these 2 statement victories over the Toronto Maple Leafs have bounced Toronto down to 7th in the division by way of point percentage and put the Bruins up in a tie for first in points and second in point percentage in the Atlantic Division. Now, I still have concerns about their underlying numbers. I still have concerns about their giving up more high danger chances than they're generating. But look, Hampus Lindholm, they're 9-1 in the games that he's played this season. He said they're starting to figure out what's going to be successful for them as a group, their identity as a group. If they stick to it, they make it hard for other teams. And he thinks they've been playing some great hockey. Zadorov added 7 games. It's easy to ride high, but you have to control the emotion. Got to understand where it's highs and lows. You got to stay even. And they did that, when they went through that losing streak early on in the season, a lot of 1-goal games. They were able to hold it together, not spiral, not say, oh, here we go again. This is exactly what happened last season. We're destined to fall down to the bottom of the NHL. No, they believed in themselves, and they have been able to turn it around. Now, even among this win streak, they're now officially the hottest team in the NHL. 7 straight wins. Anaheim now 7-1 in their last 8 after losing last night to the Colorado Avalanche. The Bruins scoring 27 goals, allowing 17 in this streak, so they're plus 10. 3.86 goals scored, which is 4th highest in the NHL since October 28th when the streak began. They've allowed 2.43 goals, which is tied for 3rd fewest in the NHL over that span. Their power play is 4th, 34.8%. The penalty kill is 12th at 84%. If there's one area that is a bit of a concern, it again is the shots. They're averaging only 27.4 and they're allowing 32, which is the 3rd highest in the NHL over the course of their winning streak. So yes, they've been playing great. There's buy-in. There's that physical presence that they are establishing. But at the same time, they're still being regularly outshot, and the expected goals ratio remains well below 50%. After last night, it's 45.76, which is 29th in the NHL. Now, they got pretty decent goaltending last night from Jeremy Swayman, who had that scary moment where his helmet came off and a slap shot came in, and thankfully it caught the top of the helmet that was falling off. Last night, what were his numbers exactly? He had 30 saves on 33 shots for a .909 save percentage, which brings him to, for the season, a save percentage of an even .900. So he is climbing. That's his 4th straight game at least .900. In fact, the last 3 games, he's allowed 3 goals on 33 shots in each of his last 3 starts. Toronto, and the New York Islanders. So, 909 would be a fantastic season average for him to reach. And he's been a big reason why the Bruins have had this recent turnaround. He's consistent. Another night out dueling Toronto's goalies. Both Stolars did not look great. Hildeby was beatable. And hopefully we're seeing that Jeremy Swayman reascension, and that will continue to provide some stability for the Boston Bruins as they move forward. Some other notable stats from last night's game. Again, Pastrnak leading the way with 2 goals, 1 assist. They also got goals from Pavel Zacha, Alex Steeves, Hampus Lindholm on the blue line, Mason Lohrei, 14 minutes and 35 seconds of ice time, an assist to his credit, as well as, that's pretty much it. Charlie McAvoy had a bit of a rough one where he gave up the puck on that shorthanded goal scored by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Block shots leader last night was McAvoy, along with Morgan Geekie, Tanner Jeannot, each with 2. Geeky Arvidsson leading the way with David Pastrnak with 4 shots on goal for the Boston Bruins. They're getting contributions up and down this lineup. And if you look at their season stats, very few players have not contributed so far this season. In fact, the only 3 players who have played for the Bruins this season without at least 1 point are Michael Callahan, Jeffrey Viel, Jonathan Aspero. The only players who have not scored a goal, those 3, and Charlie McAvoy, Andrew Peeke, and Henry Jokiharju among the regulars who have played. Jokiharju only with 3 assists so far. But again, they're getting contributions up and down the lineup, and that second line, even with Steves in there in the mix over Middlestat, who remains injured, still rolling at a pretty nice level. All right, so what does this all mean for the Boston Bruins? We'll take a look at the significance of this win streak here as the podcast continues. The NBA is back, and FanDuel has a betting prop you have to get in on. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Look, even if you missed the start of a game or just want to ride a hot hand when you join in, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. You can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, and it's not just the NBA. You can get in on the action with the NFL and the NHL. When your team's making a late push, go to FanDuel. Right now, they're giving customers $300 in bonus bets, new customers, that is, when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. 7 wins in a row. Who would have expected this? And this has shifted the Bruins' season trajectory and the Atlantic Division picture. Again, they're now tied for first in the Atlantic with 22 points, and they're second in point percentage. We've talked how the Bruins have had more games played than most other teams, so even if they were amassing some points, other teams had games in hand in order to catch up, but they've gathered 61.1% of the available points so far this season, which is, again, good for second in the Atlantic Division, which is just remarkable considering where this team was a few weeks ago. They had won 3 in a row to start the season, but then lost 6 in a row, 7 of 8, and now they've rebounded with a mirror of that. 7 wins in a row, 8 of their past 9 games this team has won. And it hasn't been against, unimportant opposition. They've been able to beat teams who are kind of in the same boat as them, not necessarily powerhouses in the NHL, but teams looking to assert themselves as playoff contenders. The Islanders, the Sabres, who are seemingly lost now without Rasmus Dahlin, Yuri Kulich. They beat the Hurricanes, which was the most impressive win. The Islanders, again, the Senators, and now the Maple Leafs with Ottawa on deck here on Thursday. The Bruins will be in Ottawa and Montreal on Saturday. Again, still big statement games to be made. So we have to revisit these preseason narratives about the Boston Bruins. Rebuilding, retooling, bridge year. Those are kind of fading off. And if the Bruins can keep it going, then we may not see that kind of fire sale that we did last season. There's been a lot of talk about Pavel Zacha specifically. Should the Bruins trade him when his value is at his absolute highest? Should they maximize a potential return for a guy who's making a very team-friendly $4.75 million and who could be had for 2 playoff runs instead of just 1? Makes you wonder what the effect would be on the team if you were to trade a guy like him who's been vital to this team's success right now. Yeah, there's a lot of time between now and the trade deadline. And Zadorov said it best. 7 games, easy to ride high, but you have to control the emotion. And when it comes to the buyers or sellers storyline, it's kind of wait and see right now at the moment. The Bruins' identity and their chemistry are seemingly ahead of schedule. It's no longer necessarily about development. It's about belief that they can keep it going. And don't forget, they're doing this without Elias Lindholm. Marat Husnudinov has stepped in and played very well alongside Morgan Geekie, David Pastrnak. They're doing this without Casey Middlestat. Alex Steve stepped in last night, scored a goal for this team. They were without Charlie McAvoy on Saturday when they beat the Toronto Maple Leafs. Last season, you can't say this enough. You lose Hampus Lindholm early on. You lose Charlie McAvoy near the end of the season or more than halfway through the season. You take those two guys off any team, or you take the top 2 defensemen off any team, they're going to struggle. You see how important Hampus Lindholm is to this team right now when they are 9-1 with him in the lineup this season. And he chipped in huge last night with a power play goal. For today, we're giving the Bruin of the day to David Pastrnak for 400 goals, 401 goals. His humility, his leadership, that keeps this group grounded, and they clearly rally around him in a big way. The Bruins just beat the Leafs twice in 4 days and looked like the better team both times. The rebuild talk, you can put it on ice. You can look at the Maple Leafs. They allow Mitch Marner to leave, go to Vegas, and you expect to be at the same caliber. That's a cautionary tale for the Boston Bruins, because if you take away too many core pieces who are still in their primes, yeah, you can make a case for trading Brandon Carlo, who was honored last night with a tribute video, and rightfully so. Charlie Coyle, Brad Marchand, you see what he's doing in Florida, and you're like, wow, that would be nice to have right now playing with Zacha and Arvidsson. But hey, that ship has sailed. The other moves you made look to be net positives so far. Fraser Minton's chipping in. Husnudinov is chipping in. Both were acquired last season at the trade deadline. They've become complementary players to this core, and they've gotten younger in the process. The next 2 games through Ottawa, Montreal will be big tests. Can they make it 8? Can they make it 9? Tomorrow, we will update the Bruins barometer and see whether we're holding, selling, or buying on this team. We'll also preview the game against the Ottawa Senators. For today, thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night podcast. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Local analysis on a national scale. You can find NHL Game Night on the Locked On NHL YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts. Special shout out to you everydayers who have already subscribed to Locked On Boston Bruins on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. Please do take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.